Since last week's sponsor declined to renew their advertisements, this week's sponsor is back to Sperry. Sperry is seafaring clothing, accessories, and shoes that are essential accompaniments for your adventurous lifestyle. It is also the official shoe of people who don't actually own a boat. Please visit Sperry.com to swab the deck. Welcome to today's episode of Splain Yourself, that podcast that gives regular people a chance to explain their actions or beliefs. I'm Michael, your mediocre joker.
I'm Josh, a father, friend, licensed professional counselor, and drummer. I'm stepping in as a co-host today, a guest, because we're interviewing the head honcho of Splain Yourself, Sarah Davis. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks so much, you guys. This is definitely weird, but I am ready to try on another hat, so to speak.
Okay, today we are sort of with a rudderless ship, or a captainless ship. We have shifted Sarah to the interview chair for a very specific purpose. Well, two very specific purposes. One, because Sarah never really got a chance to explain herself. I was the first guest. And we wanted to talk this week about discipline. So, what we decided to do was we would have Sarah do a wacky discipline challenge.
Yeah, it was definitely wacky, and it was your brainchild.
Okay. So Sarah, do you want to explain the wacky discipline challenge?
Sure. So, Michael, as we were trying to brainstorm ideas for our next podcast, Michael had the brilliant idea of me being the guest, which I love, and then we were, discussing kind of things that are, worthy of splaining, I guess, in my life. And we kind of teetered around the idea of self-discipline because it's just something I've struggled with my whole life. And so out of that came the idea to maybe try something sort of extreme for me that I stuck with for an extended period of time. And we had a couple ideas. I don't remember what all of them were.
One of them was marathon training.
Yeah. I shot that right down.
Maybe was the other one mountain, like rock climbing or mountain climbing?
That might have been one. And I told you that I thought maybe a food-related challenge would be easier for me than a physical one. And you suggested waking up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning every day.
Oh yeah, waking up early for no reason. That was another challenge. 3 in the morning.
I knew that one was going to fail because I'd wake up and have nothing to do for 4 hours and then just go back to bed. That one wasn't going to happen. I think I thought of maybe cold showers or something because I have some friends that are doing that one for no reason at all. Although there may be some health benefits. But we finally landed on a diet, and you called it the Gandhi Diet.
Yes, I stole this idea from Mahatma Gandhi, who only really ate, according to his autobiography, fruits, vegetables, and nuts. So for 1 week, Sarah ate nothing but fruit, vegetables, and nuts, and then kept a journal of it.
I did.
So,
yes.
Generally, how did you find the experience of 1 week on what I call the Gandhi Diet?
Okay, so I've never done a diet like this before. I have dieted before, and I've had limited success with diets in the past. There have been long stretches where they've worked, and of course I always revert back to old habits. So I'd never done this particular diet because I love meat so much. Starting the diet, I was a little worried that not only would I just miss having meat in my meals, but also that my body would react poorly to the change of input. But as I brainstormed different things to eat and brought those into the house, it actually turned out not to be that bad, especially because I don't usually eat fruit because I try not to keep high sugar or high carb things in the house. And so it was really actually cool to get to know fruit again. And I enjoyed that part a lot. And then, we did a lot of veggie soups and that's cool too. Cause just having a warm meal, especially in the winter, that was something I was worried about too.
Sarah, you say we. Tell me about Jerry and all this.
Well, I said we, even though I did not ask him to do this with me. I think for a few meals, he was willing to come along with it for things like dinner where we eat together.
Sure.
He did his own thing for lunch. But he's just a great guy. So that's why he agreed to. He didn't want to eat like things I couldn't eat in front of me because he's just nice. So yeah, but he didn't go all the way with me on that, which I didn't expect him to.
You mentioned past diets. How is this one different?
So, like I said, normally I'll try to just cut carbs because that has the fastest results when you're trying to lose weight, which is usually my goal with dieting. And I'm able to. It's easy for me to just stick with meats and veggies and I don't know, what are the other things we eat on the low carb diet? Nuts and that kind of thing.
Dairy.
Yeah, dairy. Oh my gosh, cheese. I can't do diets without cheese. I would never go paleo for that reason. But so this was actually the first time in a while that I'd gone without cheese for this many days in a row. So that was interesting.
Okay, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super awful, miserable, like worse than the flu.
Sure.
5 is the manageable but still kind of displeased, and
Sure.
0 is you feel great. How generally, like, what was the average for the diet?
Sure. So I would maybe even go a little lower than 5 because it, like I said, it wasn't that bad. I would say day 1, and this is like with any diet, but the first 2 days, it's such a change, and you just want to revert back to your normal patterns. And Jerry and I eat out a lot, or we'll bring food in. We'll do takeout a lot. And so, yeah, that first night, that's when I craved tacos, and it was difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Tacos are my favorite.
Do you want to read us a blurb? Sarah also kept a journal.
I did. I kept my Gandhi Diet journal, and yeah. So that day 1, I think the quote is, "I'd murder someone in front of their own mama for a taco," and then I wrote, "But that's true all the time."
Oh.
But yeah, and I would kind of write like what I ate, but also what I was planning to eat the next day, just to kind of at least start to be intentional about the choices I was making, and not be in that situation where you're starving and you have to go find something, and then you're likely to slip back into old patterns.
Tell me about the concept of cravings when you're reaching toward this idea of a specific food, realizing you're on the diet, kind of getting back into that headspace in reality. Where does that discipline then come in and say, I'm going to do this alternative thing now?
Right. Well, I can tell you for sure that in the past, my diets are usually short-lived because I don't have any kind of purpose or accountability other than I just want to lose weight. So when Michael suggested we do a podcast about this, and he said, okay, for this podcast to work, you're going to have to do this diet for a week. Like, then I have this, and then my people-pleasing kicks in as well. And I'm like, okay, if I screw this up, we've messed up this podcast, right? Sure. So that was kind of my motivation. And we did have things in the house that I wasn't supposed to eat. And I would think about it, and then I'm like, no, I got to do this because I'm committed to the podcast. So having that higher purpose other than just doing something for yourself, I think is part of what I need. And it reminds me of, and this is kind of why we landed on the discipline theme, is that, if I'm challenged in a specific way, that's when I can all of a sudden discipline just comes from nowhere, but it has to be an outside source challenging me. I'm not very good at self-motivation. So when I was 17, my sister kind of challenged me that I couldn't, I think I had suggested it, like, maybe I'll go a whole year without eating chocolate or drinking soda. And she was like, there's no way that you can do that. And she bet me something. She's like, I bet you that you can't do that. And so I just was like, okay, challenge accepted. The gauntlet was thrown down, and I definitely did it. But I feel like that's the longest I've ever been able to.
Did you go the full year?
I did.
That's incredible. Entire
1997, no soda, no chocolate. I had dreams. In fact, I had nightmares about eating just fistfuls of chocolate because, like, when you deprive yourself, I don't know, your subconscious.
You can't have.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So discipline, which is an area you say you struggle with, you only struggle with it if it is internally motivated, right? I'll show my sister, right? But for me, I can't do it, right? Why do you think that is? Because if anybody you should be concerned with, it's you.
I know,
right?
I know. We've talked about this a few times about how I'll put other people above myself in the worst ways, not in caring kind of ways, but in like, no, I have to show that person and not myself that I'm up to snuff. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's partly because I'm competitive in nature, but I also am pretty lazy, you know? So for myself, if I don't have outside pressure to get something done, that's the people pleasing, right? Outside pressure will get it done because I want to please the people, right? But if I'm my own accountability, then the laziness kicks in and I'm just like, nah, it doesn't matter because I'll just let it slide, right? Whereas I don't know that other people are gonna let it slide.
Right. Okay, so this is interesting. So is then the key to reestablishing the discipline that you want is to always have some kind of outside motivation?
So that's a strategy that I've started to try to incorporate with my goals, is to share them with other people. And Josh and I have talked about this, you know, like getting other people involved with your personal goals. And I think that's just good advice for anybody, but especially me who, you know, like I said, doesn't have great internal motivation. So like I'll have Jerry kind of do diets with me, but Josh and I have talked about this. It's hard when you just have your spouse as your accountability partner. Mm-hmm. It's too easy for the two of you to slip into the same habits, you know, like he's kind of like me in that he's not that self-motivated either. So we'll say at the beginning of the week, all right, we're going to stick to this diet until Friday, you know, we're going to go all week. And then we'll do really well Monday, Tuesday. And then by Wednesday, we're both tired and we're just like, let's get tacos. And he's like, yeah, let's get tacos. You know, like neither one of us is willing to stick to it, you know. So,
Josh, how's your level of self-motivation?
That's funny you ask. So early on in life, it was very much the way Sarah's describing. When I went to grad school, things changed a lot. I had to sort of print out what was to be expected, and I started doing a lot of goal setting. Interpersonally, I started setting myself challenges and goals, things to reach toward. And then in 2015, when I came to Next High School, I was very stressed because it was a founding counseling position. Yeah. And I needed something, like Sarah said, sort of outside of myself. So I signed up for a half marathon. And at that point, I'd only run a 4.9 mile race, whatever K that is. And I realized I could do 6 miles. And then after that, I went home and signed up for a half marathon. And it was pretty big. It was big for me.
Right.
So at that point, what I do is I print out sort of like week by week how many weeks I have left, what my goal is to run that week. So I'm doing it again. I'm currently signed up for my third half marathon right now. And I have 7 weeks left, I think. And my goal is to run 8 miles tomorrow, Saturday. And when I come home, I will take a pen and I will check off that box. Mm-hmm. And for me, it has everything to do with the box. Mm. And the box is on the TV. Oh, no, that's not true. It's not on the TV. It's a fridge. Like, what? It's a box with that TV.
Right.
Boob tube. So I put it on top of the fridge. And I moved it from the side to the front because I wanted my wife to be proud of me.
Awesome.
But I understand.
So I'll slip that in there. But yeah, no, it's actually really important to me these days to be constantly reaching towards something, and I think that's the maximizer,
right?
Which can be something I have to watch. It can be unrealistic at times. Sometimes I need to just chill out, let things go. Mm-hmm. I had the run this week, and I have to make sure I run. And I'm going to run 14 miles, which is a mile over.
Whew.
I run 14 the week before to prove to myself I can run the 13, which is kind of dumb. But I do
That makes sense.
And I'm going to do it. So mentally, I feel completely prepared. I feel over-prepared.
Right, you're certainly over-prepared.
There you go.
So that's a little Joshism in there, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot about discipline because this is the only thing in life I can really hang my hat on.
Really?
This is all I see. My main contribution to anything I've ever done that's successful is I can be more disciplined than anybody else. There are, in my opinion, a limited number of ways to get ahead in life. I would really like it if I was, say, heir to a large fortune. and then my life would go pretty good.
Yeah.
But I was not that. Some people are born with like a tremendous amount of talent or charisma. I have neither of those. Right? And you don't have to be overall talented. Like, you could just be really talented at one thing and then figure out a way for people to pay you, right? Like,
Sure.
if you're really good at math, for example, you could certainly get a job as a mathematician or a statistician or an economist, and that would be, that's a good way to make your way through life. I realized that I don't have anything that I'm particularly good at. So then what does that leave you with, essentially? Either winning the lottery, or you just have to go and be disciplined. And so this is the only thing I ever view that I really have, the only advantage I have, and this is what I base everything around for me, right? When I get up in the morning, I know that there are a million things that I have to do and a million things that I cannot do because they are discipline breaking.
Interesting.
So this is the kind of central cord that runs through my life. Is this level of discipline. I had a great moment with one of my colleagues in graduate school. I had a buddy in graduate school who we called Big Michael because he was a foot taller than I was and I was Little Michael. And we had a paper due, and he came in and he said, hey, I wrote this an hour and a half ago. And I said, hey, I've been through 6 drafts of this in the last week, of mine in the last week. And then I was like, all right, well, hope this works out well for you, because I thought I had him. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get a better grade than this guy. Like a friendly competition. And we got the papers back. The next week, we both got A's. And I was cursing him the whole way.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
But this is because he is so bright, this was the only way I could keep up with him.
Right.
Sure.
And this is a story I like to tell as a metaphor for how I see things done, or how I get things done. I don't understand how people operate without discipline. To me, when I see people who don't have a ton of it or grow up without structure or this kind of imparted system, I often just wonder, like, how can anything be accomplished?
Sure.
Interesting.
I feel like it's probably a function of personality a little bit. And, I even thought about things like birth order, like my sister was the disciplined one. She was firstborn, right?
Right.
And she did the work she put in a lot of work.
Right.
And got A's. In fact, she was valedictorian, did really well, went to college on full scholarship. And I got good grades too. They weren't that good, but
Right.
A's and B's, and I was the one waiting last minute to do things.
Right.
And I don't know. To me, I feel like that just kept getting reinforced. Like, I would worry a little bit if I waited, because I procrastinate all the time, and it does give you this anxiety, like, oh man, maybe this is not going to work out for me. I've made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
I should have started way before now. You always have that feeling, but then you turn something in and you get it back and it's an A or B, and I'm like, why was I worried? So the next time you have a project, there's just not that motivation to start early, because that wouldn't have done me much good the last project I did. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It's just a learning. You're learning that, what I would rather do with my time doesn't actually cut that much into these goals that I have. But so for school, it turned out fine.
That story makes me nervous.
Why?
I'd say you guys are on pretty different spectrums.
Yeah, we are.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Old 6 drafts Blum doesn't like that kind
See,
of stuff.
I approach most everything with what's the bare minimum I can do and still have the result that I want to have. And I don't know if that's laziness, or to me it's also kind of it is laziness, and I know that that's my sinful nature, but I also kind of feel like it's almost this, I want to be efficient and I don't want to spend more time than I have to, because then I have time to do other things, so.
Right, and I agree with that
Yeah.
to some extent.
Sure.
But what I think there are things that you should try and do as minimally as possible.
Sure.
Because they are not productive in the long term. But I also think you have to be able to flip a switch and find something that's important and then just apply as much
Go
sort
after
of
it.
effort
Yeah.
and discipline as possible.
I'm totally with you. And this is the rub for me, is when I do have things that I really, really want. School was never that big a deal to me, and obviously my diets aren't that big a deal to me. But there have been things like, yeah, it would be really nice if I could go to the gym every day. It would be nice if I could, get healthier. And if those things become strong desires, it is hard for me to flip that switch and say, okay, I'm just going to do it. Although I will say, after this diet, we went into holidays, right? And as soon as holidays were over and everybody got the, New Year's resolution bug, Jerry and I talked about maybe trying because we had been doing the low carb thing, and then we decided that maybe it'd be a little easier to try just like counting calories, because that's been successful. And then we heard, like the day after we talked about it, we heard on the radio that was one of the most effective strategies if you're gonna diet, right? Because you kind of still get to eat, from every kind of food. You're not feeling restricted. You just kind of have to stop at a certain point. So we have been doing that for the last few days, and I hope that I can stick with it. But
so Sarah, tell me this from your perspective, someone who finds reward sounds differently than Michael. What would you suggest if there was another Sarah sitting here at the table and she said, I want to be a little more disciplined, but you don't want to make her life miserable?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So that's a great question. And actually, I would tell the other Sarah to try what I've been trying since July, which, how we got those self journals in the packages. I didn't order a package, but some pros ordered that package and got the self journal. And I noticed one of them and bought one on my own, and I kept that. And I've been doing that style of journaling ever since. Okay. That's a 3-month journal, and it has ways that you're supposed to like set goals for yourself, and then like 3 major goals, and then you come up with like action steps for each goal. Okay. And the first time I did it, it was good, but I think the way that I approached it probably wasn't the best because it was hard to maintain. And so I did it again from October to December, and I got a little better at it then. And now I've started a new one for January through March, and I changed it even more. And I feel like with each iteration, it's given me a better feeling about trying to track things daily and weekly and be a little more disciplined. I think the way that I started it, I was being way too strict on myself and having very high expectations. Like every day you will do this and this and this and this and this. And now I'm kind of backing off and saying, all right, how about let's look longer term and say, by the end of the week, you've done these things. So I don't know. That's one thing. But I would love to hear you guys' suggestions. I
see a similarity between the two of you guys.
Really?
I think I hear outside source and higher purpose similarly in different ways, if that makes some sense. I'll tell you why. Where. So for you, it sounds like outside accountability in someone expecting something of you motivates you to commit.
It does.
And then I hear from Michael, the challenge to compete and win motivates you to do better and try harder.
Yes, but the thing is, I don't consider myself to be an overly competitive person. What I have, and I think this was it's a very harmful thing that I've developed, is my accomplishments have become a large part of my identity. And I think this is harmful, right? Because you are much more than your accomplishments, and you fulfill many more roles. But this is what I internalized, and it's a dual-edged sword. There are often times where I am supposed to be doing something, and if I'm not doing it, I will beat the crap out of myself in an unhealthy fashion. And it involves calling myself a bunch of horrible names, which you can't say on television, and feeling really, really bad afterwards, like exceptionally bad. This behavior, in my understanding, is pretty toxic, right? This is essentially like self-harm on a lighter kind of way, like a mental version of it. But this is what I am, right? It serves me well in many occasions because I can motivate myself to do it, right? And it has led me to some accomplishments. But at the same time, it accounts for a lot of the depression I battle. So this is sort of how I get to this. At the same time, if you're not in my head and listening to the depression, it looks really, really great, right? Because look at Blum, he can just go and do this, and it's not that big of a deal. But there is this kind of like duality of it that I like to think makes me complicated and interesting, but may also make me like a mess a little bit. So that's sort of how I view it.
How do you apply the area of discipline to your discipline? In other words, you're in this journey to find yourself in a better place by way of, it works, but it's a double-edged sword. So how do you discipline the discipline?
So is the question, how do I ease up on the discipline?
Does that feel like discipline to you at that point?
So what I have to do, and what I work with the counselor on, is not being so hard on myself. Right. So instead of disciplining the discipline, which is like tamping it down, what I have to do is ease up on it, I think, and give myself a break.
Okay.
Because you did not accomplish step 8 on your to-do list today does not mean you're a failure at life. Doesn't mean you let your wife down. She probably doesn't care about the state of the floors. Like if they have cat hair on them, and the cat hair will certainly be there tomorrow to clean up.
That's right.
Yep.
As far as I've ever seen, cat hair won't get up and walk away, as much as I wished it to many times, and that is okay. And I have to accept that. I'm not good at it by any stretch of the imagination, and this will be something that I deal with on a real practical level. Everything I do, or 90% of the things I do, are geared to fight against the ramifications of being so hard on myself. So I am one of the few people I know who owns a fake sun lamp. You familiar with this?
I got one in my office.
Yeah, you have, that's right. I have seen yours. Because the fake sun lamp makes me feel better.
Sure.
Right? And so that goes on in the morning. I watch my diet because it makes me feel better. It keeps my mood up. Because it's very easy for me to slip into self-beat-up mode. It happens at like the drop of a hat. So
you guys are so incredibly complimentary in this moment, where you're saying you would do well to have a little bit of a discipline to let certain things go.
Yeah, it would be an ease up for me.
And Sarah's saying, I need to do a little
Ramp
bit
it
better
up.
with my own.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool how this conversation flipped a little bit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And to me, discipline is an endless loop, because you can always be more disciplined and more efficient.
Right.
So I always think everybody can be more disciplined and efficient to their approach, which further drives you down this cycle of,
That's right.
or if you're failing.
And that's something that Jerry and I talk a lot about too, is when we do develop goals for ourselves, it's very easy to get caught up in selfish motivations, like, well, I want to lose weight so that I look better, or, you can start to kind of see where it's all a little bit in vain, because eventually you're gonna get old.
Right.
And everything's gonna fall apart. Your muscles aren't gonna work anymore. And it's like, you can have these goals, but thinking about it more for us, it's more helpful to think about our goals in terms of, will this make me better able to serve the purpose that we feel like we are here for, So, like, if I feel like it's my purpose to be a good aunt, would I be better at aunting if I weighed less? Maybe, but
Right.
I would be better aunting if I'm around longer and I'm not in the hospital because of illness, because I'm not taking care of myself, right?
Right.
So I think it's helpful to think in terms of, are my goals serving a purpose that's just beyond me being this awesome individual? If you're getting happier, that's great, but also, how are you able to serve, the greater, the world around you, I guess.
Right, and this sort of goes along with your whole thing, is that your view is very much outward.
Yeah.
Right, and where mine is much more focused on myself.
Well, but you also have outward things that you want. Like, you want to be a good husband to your wife. You want
Yes.
to be able to defend her at all costs.
That's right.
And yeah, absolutely. So your fitness goals tie in with that. Like, and they're not just about you. It's also about people you care about.
Right.
Yeah.
To an extent, but it's mainly about
It's just
honestly,
me.
mainly about me. There are side benefits. Since I got myself in a better shape, I stopped snoring.
There you go.
And that helps.
wow.
That helps Lauren.
Absolutely.
So she can sleep better. So there are some side benefits, but it's
Sure.
mainly tied back into my identity and this large hunk of narcissism that I am.
Well, that's where, that's totally my gut instincts about all my goals. So I have to fight it and say, how do I make this about? And that's I think why I'm able to kind of let the pressure off a little bit, because you know, if I miss my diet 3 days in a row, yeah, that sucks for me personally because I wasn't able to do what I set out to do, but did that affect my ability to, you know, teach or be a good wife? Nah, not really.
Sure. Josh, is your motivation, is it internal or external for you?
I'm fascinated by this discussion. This is excellent. It can do both. So it's interesting because I don't like to promote the things that I'm doing. So, you know, I didn't talk about the half marathon. I don't think the last time I was doing Splain.
No.
I don't think you did.
I don't like to be the center of attention, but I do sometimes work for affirmation. And it is sort of something that I watch, you know, similar to the way you described it, where it's like, hey, this matters to me, it's important to me, it's certainly one of the ways in which I feel loved, respected, and received. But I don't know. That's a good question. I think in some ways, like I'm running that race by myself. I didn't sign up with anybody, and I won't try to find anybody that I know.
Sure.
And that's just a weird thing, because who signs up for a half marathon not to be in community and engage with someone else? And where's my accountability? And maybe I steer away from that because I don't like to be poked, prod, and I like to feel autonomous, and I don't want to be challenged in those ways. I like to challenge myself.
Right.
So I don't know, but I do long for accountability. I long for community. I long to have people in my life to help me see things that I simply can't see myself. And that's kind of been so what's the most recent thing would be the last thing I just said. Like, even as a licensed professional counselor, I can't see my own stuff.
Yeah.
I just can't. And so and as far as Teresa and I as a couple, we need other couples outside of ourselves to help us see where we are. We all need each other, and that's sort of the complementary way I saw you guys a few moments ago, benefiting from one another, literally learning from one another in that moment. I'm like, hey, that's a pretty beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think this is part of the interesting part of Splain Yourself, is that we all don't, you can see, I think, other approaches to things, and that maybe they are interesting to you. Back to your diet, Sarah. Can you read us your last entry, and then
Yes.
I would really like to discuss the long-term effects of your diet.
Okay, last entry. I don't want to read you my last entry because I cheated.
Oh, well, this is a surprise.
All right, but listen.
Surprise reveal. I didn't know
This
Sarah
is-
cheated at the end.
But there's a reason why.
Okay.
So this was 7 days, right? And on day 7, this is what I wrote. Home today, because I was sick.
Right.
This diet made me sick.
This is the
FYI.
part. This is the long-term part I'd like to get to, was you being sick.
All right, so on day 7, I stayed home from work. So I said, home today. I've had a lot of water and some tea and some coffee. Also, GL soup. I don't know golden lentil soup. It's my favorite. It's really good stuff.
Sounds terrible.
Oh no, it's really
Ugh.
good. It's like curry flavored. It's
Ugh.
really good. I'll bring you some, Michael.
I'd rather eat an earthworm. It sounds awful.
So I had golden lentil soup and, wait for it, a cookie.
Whoa.
And then I drew a frowny face.
Oh, sad face.
And then I
emoji.
said, but I had to eat it. Jerry brought it to me as a get well gift, and it would have been rude to refuse. And I was going to write more and kind of like summarize my thoughts, but I was too sick to do that. So, but we can do that now.
Right. So this is the sort of long tail of this story is that we had actually this podcast planned for much earlier in December.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
in early January now.
Like the day after that last entry, which was December
Right.
14th.
December 14th, and we're recording in
January 5th.
January 5th. And Sarah got the bubonic plague
I did.
in between.
So, yeah, I'm not recommending the Gandhi Diet to anyone because you could end up with a 5-week-long cold, which is what I've had. I'm feeling much better today, though.
Well,
you were giving me a lot of crap yesterday.
Yes, I was.
Because I hadn't been to the doctor.
Yes. Do you think that there is any connection between all of this going on and changing your diet drastically and you getting a plague that wiped out most of Europe? A healthy chunk of Europe.
No, I don't think so because Jerry got the same thing and I got it after he did. So he must have picked it up from somewhere, I don't know, work or something. But I hear it has been going around. I think it was just coincidental that it happened when I started the diet. Who knows? The diet may have even saved me from some worse symptoms. I don't know. I haven't had a fever, so
Interesting.
yeah.
The other thing we found out as a result of Sarah's illness is she hates Western medicine.
I don't hate Western medicine. I avoid the doctor, and we can do a whole other podcast about this.
We could.
Yeah.
But briefly explain why you hate Western medicine and you would prefer to eat roots and berries.
I will tell you that's not true at all. I love drugs. I take pills all the time for I need them. If I need them, and I've been on Dayquil for the last 29 days in a row. But yeah, I avoid the doctor just because my experiences, which we could talk about in more detail later, my experiences with doctors have not been great. I just don't feel like they have done a lot to help me with the issues that I've had.
Okay, so rather than take a risk and go to a doctor, you decided to be sick for 6 weeks.
Yes. Although I think, and this is my theory, it may be wrong, I think doctor would not have changed the duration of this illness at all. There's no cure for the common cold, ladies and gentlemen, just in case you didn't know.
Okay. I don't want to delve down this road.
Michael, go for it.
No. Well, that's.
Oh, it's 3 o'clock.
It's 3 o'clock, and
Yeah.
we have a separate podcast there.
We'll go from here and immediately write the next episode.
Right, we'll go right to the doctor's office.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. I know it's a weird juxtaposition being on the other side, and we're really grateful that you're willing to undertake this wacky podcast stunt for our entertainment.
I was glad to do it.
All right.
I'll do something wackier next time, like go to the doctor.
Yeah, something crazy. But that's all the time we have for today. But as always, hang loose until our next episode, and until then, knuckle up and always be ready to splain yourself.
Woo!